So I don't intend for my videos to be strictly political. I think there are interesting ideas outside of the realm of politics that are worth thinking about and having conversations about. That said, there will be, and as you no doubt know, has been a lot of politics on this channel. And I intend to be straightforward about my opinions on whatever the subject may be. I don't claim to be an expert on any subject whatsoever, and I am always open to hearing different viewpoints. But I'm also not one of those faux enlightened moderates who needlessly plays devil's advocate on every topic just for the sake of doing so. At the same time, I want to stress the importance of nuance and context. Political situations are rarely as black and white as some pundits and other public figures would have you believe. And a good faith effort to consider that context should and will be made, by me at least. But that doesn't mean we can't have a stance. A lot of the time, the biggest roadblocks in the way of progress are not those who actively oppose it, but the fence sitters who play defense attorney for people with clearly harmful ideas. Speaking of which, let's talk about Trump. Hi, I'm T1J.
Follow me.
If you follow me on social media, or if you've watched any of my videos on YouTube, or if you know me at all, you probably have gathered that I am not a big fan of our current president. And there are a lot of reasons for this. His conservative policy positions, his generally immature and arrogant demeanor, his abusive relationship with truthful statements, the list goes on. But the characteristic of Donald Trump that sticks out to me is his apparent insensitivity, if not outright bigotry, towards women, LGBTQ folks, but most evidently towards people of color, particularly foreigners and immigrants. Now, this overt lack of tact sometimes comes off as the same understandable yet undeniably frustrating cluelessness you find in many older Americans. They come from a different generation, after all, when it wasn't awkward to say, "I love Hispanics" as you eat a taco bowl, or to ask an Asian person, "But where are you really from?" But other times, the president's comments really do seem to come from a place of true fear and hatred. One of the very first controversies of Donald Trump's candidacy was his insinuation that Mexico was sending criminals and rapists across the border, at least to such an extent that it was worth commenting on. Now, of course, you would think that something like that would immediately disqualify someone from being the president, but we all know what happened. Before and since then, the commander-in-chief has, almost like clockwork, continued to make racially insensitive statements, which kind of flies in the face of his claim that he is, quote, the least racist person you ever encountered. Can we just do like a quick racism lightning round? In 2016, Trump said that a federal judge who was overseeing a case against Trump University was unable to be objective because he had Mexican heritage. In a debate with Hillary Clinton the same year, he said of black neighborhoods,
we have a situation where we have our inner cities, African Americans, Hispanics, are living in hell because it's so dangerous. You walk down the street, you get shot.
Personally, I grew up in black neighborhoods in Alabama, and I never even saw a gun until I started hanging out with white people. White people in Alabama love guns. Last year, Trump reportedly said that the thousands of immigrants from Haiti, quote, all have AIDS. What? And also that the 40,000 immigrants who had come from Nigeria that year would, quote, never go back to their huts in Africa. He mocks Senator Elizabeth Warren by calling her Pocahontas, and even did so in the middle of a meeting with Navajo veterans. He has retweeted white nationalist propaganda, anti-Semitic memes, and false statistics about black crime, and he has been very slow, if not completely reluctant, to disavow or even condemn racists, including those who outwardly support him. Sometimes even overtly praising them, as demonstrated by his pardoning and advocacy of Sheriff Joe Arpaio, who was convicted of racially profiling Latinos. These are all examples of comments made since Trump began his campaign for president, but his history of racism extends throughout the entire timeline of his public career. A former employee of Trump reported that he once said, "Laziness is a trait in blacks," and that he didn't want black guys counting his money. He had a well-known conflict in the 90s with American Indian tribes who were threatening his casino business, in which he made unsubstantiated claims about criminal activity among Native Americans. And there is and will be more, because that's what Trump does. This is nothing new. So the most recent example of racially loaded commentary from Trump, as of the making of this video at least, who knows when he'll do it again, could be tomorrow.
The Post reports that according to two people briefed in the meeting, the president asked, quote, "Why are we having all these people from shithole countries come here?" referring to African countries and Haiti. The president then went on to talk about how they needed to bring in more people from places like Norway.
Really, Norway? So Trump does this thing where he makes obviously offensive statements, but leaves them just vague enough to where he and his supporters can deny any wrongdoing and claim you're misinterpreting his words.
So I have, she gets out and she starts asking me all sorts of ridiculous questions. And, you could see there was blood coming out of her eyes, blood coming out of her wherever.
What do you mean? You're just assuming. How do you know he wasn't talking about her ears or her mouth? And I made a whole video about avoiding straw men and mischaracterizing people's arguments. But here's the thing. I remember in elementary school English class, we were taught how to use and identify context clues. It's a fundamental skill of communication. At some point, we have to stop letting our intelligence be insulted. The word racist has a very strong connotation. It's something that people don't like to be called. It's been humorously noted that racist is like the N-word for white people, but what makes someone a racist? But even before that, what even is a racist? Now, I think screenshotting the dictionary is almost always done by someone who is being a douchebag, so let's think for ourselves. Now, racist as an adjective is easier to define than racist as a noun. Being racist is showing prejudice, hate, or unfair treatment on the basis of race or ethnicity. Okay, that's a basic definition. Race and racism are complicated subjects that are studied and written about by actual professionals of many fields. In sociology, power dynamics are taken into account. In criminal justice, racial categories are broader. There are many dimensions to this. We're just covering surface level shit here. So how racist does someone have to be before we can say, yo, I think that guy's a racist? Some have argued that only people who self-identify as racist or racial supremacists should be called racist, but I think that's pretty useless. You could do that for anything. That's like saying if someone doesn't admit they're addicted to heroin, then you shouldn't accuse them of that, even if they clearly are. So look, most, if not all people, including people of color, are subject to some degree of implicit bias. It's just one of the shortcomings of being a human being. We're defective, but unfortunately you didn't keep the receipt, so you're stuck with us. So if everybody's a little bit racist, then racist as a term seems to be kind of meaningless, right? So here's my thing. Even though we all have biases, that doesn't mean that we can't acknowledge them and work on improvement. Humans aren't perfect, but one of the beautiful things about being a person is that we can reflect on ourselves and change for the better. We're not necessarily bound by our caveman instincts. We're getting to a point where I think ignorance is becoming less and less of a credible excuse, especially for anyone with even a moderate amount of exposure to mainstream culture, which I would imagine includes the fucking president of the United States. So for Donald Trump to consistently over and over make racist statements, and the statements are racist if we use our definition from before, they undeniably show prejudice and hate based on race and ethnicity. So let's not mince words here. It's easy to dismiss Trump as just an old man from a different generation who's just not PC by today's standards. But what I see is a man who consistently expresses mistrust and prejudice towards immigrants of color and who makes no attempt to address his own biases. People make mistakes. People use poor word choices. But some people hold steadfast in their own biases against people of other races and cultures and put no effort into acknowledging facts or trying to broaden their perspective. And I think those people can safely be called racist. That's just me though. What do you think? Thank you for watching my video. Now I'm gonna be real with you. Ad revenue is basically not a thing anymore on this channel. Being a full-time video creator is harder than it's ever been. So if you find any value in these videos and you'd like to help me make them better and more sustainable, click or tap the Patreon logo below and become a patron. Even a pledge of $1 a month goes a super long way. So it would be amazing if you checked out my Patreon page. And I wanna take this time to thank all of my existing patrons. You are the lifeblood of this channel, literally.